We're doing this. Don't click away. What is the deal with Fourth Wing? Recently, I've been doing a video series around hype. I've talked about books that are underhyped, overhyped, and appropriately hyped. And when I say hyped, I mean that phenomenon and rage that goes on BookTok and Bookstagram and BookTube, where it is all you see people talking about. And usually I am referencing good hype, where you see a book that has been released and people are raging about it and it is all super, super positive reviews. When you read that particular book, it affects those opinions that you then have afterwards. So I've talked a lot about hype. I've reached every corner of hype that you could possibly reach at this point. And the most interesting thing happened on every single video that I posted. Overhyped books, underhyped books, appropriately hyped books. You all commented Fourth Wing, saying that Fourth Wing belongs in each one of those categories. And that was the wildest thing to me, because I really love reading the comments, engaging in the comments, hearing all of your different opinions, but it was the most bizarre thing to read Fourth Wing is overhyped. Fourth Wing is underhyped. Fourth Wing is definitely appropriately hyped. This is a very divided book as far as the internet goes, and I would like to talk about it a little bit more. I have been really struggling to gather my thoughts cohesively, but I'm gonna try, and potentially this could get a little bit word vomity, but I'm gonna do my best to keep it pretty concise and clear, and we're just gonna work our way through this. I'm gonna talk about what I think of the book, my personal experience with reading it, maybe where it falls on the hype scale, and I would love to hear what you guys think as well. But to give a precursor to that, please be respectful and kind in the comments. I'm starting to learn that hot topics bring out aggressive commenters. We are all entitled to our opinions, and the nature of this is that there's no true right and true wrong. You could watch this video and disagree with every single thing that I'm about to say, and that's 100% fine, because it doesn't actually sway my opinion on the matter. This is my personal experience, and I'm gonna talk about it. It's the nature of being a reader, and I think it's actually really, really beautiful that we can all read the same book and have totally different experiences with it. So I think that that needs to be celebrated, and there is no shaming allowed, whether you agree or not, but I would love to hear your opinion in the comments. Now that we have that settled, I want to start by talking about my personal experience reading the book. So Fourth Wing came out in April of 2023, and this was kind of before I was really in the trenches of BookTok and Bookstagram and BookTube. I wasn't following a lot of readers. I wasn't really getting my content that way, but I did follow a couple people at that point. And even though I wasn't really entrenched in it yet, I still could not escape Fourth Wing. Like, this book was everywhere. And the thing about it is I didn't see a single negative review for so long. This completely took over my algorithm, and the only thing that I saw was people being 100% certifiably obsessed with it. So I was really interested in reading it, naturally. The thing is, it was so popular at the time that I literally could not get a copy. It was totally sold out at every bookstore that I went to. It was on back order on Amazon. So I didn't get to read it right at the beginning when it first came out. The other thing to note is that during this time in my life, I was in one of the worst reading slumps I have ever experienced. And it was because I had just gone through a lot of transition in my life. I had recently gotten married. My husband and I moved states. We got a new house. We both started new jobs. And I was definitely in a period of life where you're just trying to find your footing again. You're just trying to transition and do it well and get over all of the stress of that. And it was good. Everything that was happening to me was good, but it was different, and it was kind of hard for me to settle. So I was not reading. I didn't feel like I had the mental capacity to read anything. I think the only thing that I read in an entire year was a reread of ACOTAR, just because it was like a comfort series that I already knew everything that happened. I didn't need to be as emotionally invested in the whole thing. So I reread ACOTAR, but it didn't get me out of a slump. If anything, it just put me deeper into a slump because I had nothing. So when Fourth Wing came out, I was really interested in it, but I also was kind of scared that I wouldn't be able to finish it because I just wasn't feeling like I wanted to read. I had no desire about it. But finally, I got my hands on this book in July, and oh my gosh, I literally could not put it down. I read through this book so fast. I was completely addicted to it. I was addicted to the story. I was reading it as fast as humanly possible. And as soon as I finished it, all I wanted to do was go back and read it again. I felt that wonderful feeling of being excited about reading, excited about books again. It was a 5-star for me just because it really took me from this deep, dark reading slump and literally slingshotted me out of it. And because of that, because of how I felt reading it, I have a fondness for the book. I loved reading it. I loved my experience, and I will always look back on this book, for me personally, as a 5-star read. However, those are extremely subjective thoughts. I am not talking about this book objectively right now. I am talking about it subjectively and how I personally experienced it and what it was like reading it for me, which was a big 2 thumbs up. On the other side, I know that there were a lot of people that had the same experience as me. They saw it being hyped up on the internet. It took them a bit to get the book. They finally got their hands on the book and they read it and they're like, this is fine. It's an okay fantasy book, but the way that the internet is talking about it got my expectations so high, sky high, and it was just a big disappointment. And then there's this weird thing that happens where you kind of get personally offended. Like, people are talking about this book so intensely and so positively, but I don't personally like it, and now I'm offended that everybody else likes it and that everybody else is talking about it. And then you got to go be like a little bully on the internet and talk about how much you didn't like it. That is definitely the negative effects of hype. I think that if you didn't enjoy this book, there are very plausible reasons why. The writing is not awesome. You know, it's kind of cringy. The characters are very hyperbolic. They're very over the top. There are some plot holes in it. You can really dive into the plot, ask yourself some questions, and come out with more questions for sure. There's definitely a rinse and repeat of some tropes, specifically romantic-y tropes that people love to read about, but I think people are getting a little bit tired of reading them too, because there's no originality in the writing. It's just, we're reading the same thing over and over again that worked for certain people and certain authors and certain books, and now people are seeing that success and trying to replicate it in their own books. And I'm not always against that, but I think when a book like Fourth Wing is getting so hyped up, if we see it being hyped up just because it's a repeat of other tropes, that also plays into it being a bit of a letdown. Like, why are we hyping this up when maybe there are other books that started the tropes or started the traditions that don't get as much recognition? Another reason people don't really like this book is because the romance is just too much. It's a little bit annoying and it just kind of takes over the whole plot. And if you are reading this as a fantasy book and not a romantasy book, I can 100% understand why you would not want to see that. Xaden himself is definitely a copy and paste of some of the, how do you say, shadow daddies that have existed in fantasy romance literature recently and have gotten really popular. He's the same. You know, we've seen him before, but we also love these other characters. So people really love Xaden because that's the type of book that they want to read. There are infinite issues with this book, and I'm not blind to them. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that it was a 5-star read for me because objectively it's the best written book in the world and Rebecca Yarros deserves a Pulitzer Prize or something. Like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to say that people enjoy it for different reasons and people don't enjoy it for different reasons. The way that I look at it, and one of the reasons why I think I personally was able to enjoy it, is because I kind of knew what I was getting into here. This is fantasy divergent with dragons. I was not expecting anything other than that. I was expecting cheesy romance. I was expecting insane action and adventure and a wild plot that in any other book wouldn't work. But my expectations were there, so I wasn't surprised by it and I wasn't disappointed by it, and that kind of enabled me to ignore it and enjoy. I think about this in a really similar way that I think about movies. My husband is a filmmaker and he really appreciates high quality movies. The way that they're made, the story that's being told, everything that goes into making a beautiful movie, he really, really appreciates. It is much more difficult for him to appreciate like a rom-com or a silly movie that doesn't really have a ton of depth, but I am personally able to enjoy and find comfort in because I know exactly what I'm getting. If I want to watch a rom-com, I'm not suddenly disappointed when the rom-com didn't win any Academy Awards. You know, it's just not going to happen. But I know what I'm getting out of it, and I personally enjoy that. That's a personal preference. In a more extreme example, you could talk about Hallmark Christmas movies in this way. Hallmark Christmas movies are some of the worst movies that are being made, but it's also one of the biggest industries in the film world because people want cozy feelings. They want to sit down with a cup of hot cocoa, curl up by the Christmas tree, and watch a really cheesy Christmas movie that objectively is so bad. But I love it. I love to watch it. I love the feeling that it gives me and the atmosphere that it creates. It's one of my favorite things about the holidays. Now, of course, I'd never watch it outside of the holidays because that kind of takes a bit of the magic away, but it's the same principle. You could also argue that Marvel is a similar experience. I am also a big Marvel Cinematic Universe fan. Some of those movies are giant letdowns. Some of them are amazing, and it really has set a standard for superhero movies and just Marvel movies in general. When a standard is set with something like Infinity War or even the Iron Man movies, you want to expect the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to reach that standard. And the truth of the matter is they don't, and they won't, because you can't keep recreating that standard. But I still watch all of the movies, all 45,000 of those movies, and I still enjoy them, and I still love the broader story that's being told. You could come up with so many different examples like that. I think with movies, we're a little bit more lenient on what people can enjoy and what they can't enjoy, because you look at maybe like a horror film. I don't like horror and I don't watch horror, but that doesn't mean that other people can't enjoy that genre of films. I think with books, because they're a little bit more, I say this lovingly because I am a reader who reads a lot. Books are a little more pretentious. If you tell somebody that, oh, I'm gonna go home and watch a movie to decompress, that's like normal, that's fine, you're watching a TV show or whatever. If you tell somebody, I'm gonna go home to read and decompress, I don't know, this may just be my personal experience, but a lot of times people are like, oh, you think you're smart? Like, there's just this different air around reading, and even in the community of other readers, if you don't like a certain book, or if you do like a certain book and differing opinions happen, it just feels so much more toxic to me. And I don't know why, but it's definitely something that I've noticed. This book is a crux of a lot of toxicity, and I think we just need to let people enjoy what they enjoy. I understand that there's a lot of hype around this book, and it can probably be considered bad hype around this book because there are a lot of people that get sucked into the hype, read it, and then are super disappointed. That sucks. I'm really sorry if you had that experience because it's not fun. That is one of the worst cards that you can draw as a reader, is seeing everybody else love these books, reading it yourself, and just not being able to get to that same level because it feels really isolating, and it feels like maybe there's something wrong with you for not liking a book. The amount of comments that I've gotten on some of these videos that I've been putting out about hype, verbatim, people have said to me, oh, I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't like such and such book. There's nothing wrong with you for not liking a book that other people really like, or for liking a book that other people really don't like. It's a personal preference. I feel like I'm just going on a rant at this point, and I don't know if I'm saying everything that I want to say, but the main thing that I want to say is let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. Let people talk about what they want to talk about and if they enjoy it or not. I know that sometimes it can set unrealistic expectations, and that does suck, and that's happened to me before, but there's something about this book that really sets people off. Another thing that I think is really interesting about it is that in the first couple months of it being released, maybe even longer, there was no negativity around it. It was only good talk. And then something switched, and I personally think that it was when the second book was released. Iron Flame was released, and Iron Flame, oh no, are we gonna get into this right now? All right, let's do it. Iron Flame came out an absurdly short amount of time after Fourth Wing came out. Iron Flame came out in November of 2023. Fourth Wing came out in April of 2023. These are large, dense fantasy books. I feel like the typical runtime for the next book in a series is like minimum a year, if not closer to 18 months to 2 years. This came out within around 6 months of each other, and there's a lot of conspiracies about this book as well, because as somebody that read and enjoyed Fourth Wing, amidst all of its problems that people like to point out, I read it, I enjoyed it, it was a fun time. As somebody that had that experience with Fourth Wing, I was really, really excited to read Iron Flame, and this was a significant decrease in quality, and people noticed. You can really, really tell. This book needed to be 200 pages shorter. It needed to really tighten up the plot, tighten up the characters and their relationships. The miscommunication communication that happens between these main characters goes on for way too long, and you can feel it as a reader. It's super, super disheartening to know that this world that you love, these characters that you love, are taken in a direction that you really don't like. The other thing that I felt about this book was a major decrease in the quality of the writing. Again, Fourth Wing has its problems, but Iron Flame has its problems. I saw a lot of people saying that they believed that AI helped write a lot of this because the success of Fourth Wing was so intense that the publishers and the author were trying to keep up with it, and she literally couldn't write the book fast enough, and so they turned to AI to help her. And as much as I want to point my finger and say that that is a crazy conspiracy theory, it really does sound like AI wrote significant chunks of this book, and it's very, very disappointing. And I think that this book came out, people read it, people flipped because of how bad they thought it was, and that kind of opened their eyes to some other problems in Fourth Wing. And now again, people are offended by this book and offended by how it turned out, and suddenly they need to turn all of that negative energy to the original book, and well, that has all these problems, and the writing in that was really bad, and the relationship was bad, and all this type stuff. Even people that previously enjoyed the book, it's like this crazy wave on the internet that just takes people and changes and molds your opinions. And I think we just need to be able to manage expectations. Even if you see crazy stuff happening on the internet, we as readers need to learn to go in with an open mind, manage our expectations that a book might not be as good as everybody is saying it is. Try not to get swept up in the opinion trains that everybody else has, because the bandwagon phenomenon is real, and it's unfortunate how it can really bolster a book or it can really tank a book. And as much as we like to crap on these books or hype them up, the truth of the matter is there are people that read them that love them and then feel really insecure for actually liking them because everybody else hates it. And it's just messy, and it feels toxic, and I don't like it, and I don't really know how to go about it, and I don't even really know what I'm saying at this point. But I just felt like I wanted to say something to specifically address all of your comments, because everybody had something to say about Fourth Wing, and I didn't know what to say back. And I literally commented that to a few of you. I think I said something like, I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know how to say them yet, but I'm figuring it out. This is me figuring it out. I don't think I have it all figured out, but it's a starting place. And I think that this could spark some really interesting discussions in the comments. But again, I have to ask you to be kind and be considerate to other people, and don't come after them for having different opinions than yourself. Keep an open mind. Let's have some fun discussions. So there you have it. That's my Fourth Wing rant. For better or for worse, here we are, and we're getting a new book in January, and I'm sure we will be talking about it once more, but I think we can all agree that the third book needs to be better. Well, thank you so much for joining, as always, and hanging out with me and listening to me rant about a single book. It's a little bit different than the content that I usually like to put out, but I just had this itch and I couldn't get rid of it, and I really, really wanted to talk to you guys about it. So thank you so much for sitting through it. Please join in on the comments and tell me what you thought of Fourth Wing and just the phenomena and the hype around the entire thing. I would love to hear your thoughts, and we will see you next time.